Hey, Soul Survivors. I'm Cynthia Schiller here with Cory Cobbelaere, and he is diagnosed with having bipolar, and he has a fascinating story. He's a public speaker. He's on a committee that deals with mental illness in the criminal system. He does have a prior history where he's been to prison, and we'll talk about that. Knowing more about bipolar is something that's extremely important. Like you said, it is a very overused term. And if somebody does have bipolar, that it is important to address. There is hope. And you had family members supporting you. They ended up leaving you because they didn't understand this. This happened back when you were 28 that you got the diagnosis. Can you share a little bit about your journey and some of the things that people should be aware of, some of your struggles? Because I know it got to the point of feeling suicidal. So this is something that should be addressed. Cory, share with us how you found out you had bipolar, some of the things that brought you to prison, and where you are now.
Well, I mean, the rubber hit the road at the age of 28. I had absolutely no idea or had even heard of bipolar disorder. Of course, hindsight's 2020, and I can look back and see clear back to the second grade, a cycle of,
Oh,
depression, mild depression, and hypomania, which hypomania worked for me. It helps me in my early years.
what do you like? What do you like in a manic state?
Manic or hypomanic?
Oh, let's do both.
Yeah. Hypomanic, extremely well organized, clear-minded, see everything clearly for what it is, highly productive, everything that someone would want to be, actually.
Do you feel good in that state?
Yes, energetic, absolutely energetic. But in a hypomania, not so much so that I'm not sleeping.
Okay.
Or not taking care of myself so much. It escalates slowly.
Right.
That hypomania feels very good, and it's very, very difficult for high functioning people, anyways, type A personality and hypomania. It's very difficult for family and friends and your support system to know, there he goes. He's
Right.
doing
He's
public speaking, he's written
escalating.
a book, and everyone's like, this is wonderful, but is it?
Right. Yeah.
Is it going to keep going up?
It's almost like
And
too much of a good thing. Is it?
yes. But then you don't want to degrade it either,
Right.
because it doesn't necessarily mean it's hypomania. It might be just my regular state.
Could be a good day. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you know the difference
How do I tell the difference?
Yes. Or how would it affect your relationships if somebody was with you that they could see these warning signs?
As far as anyone noticing it, it would be irritability.
Oh,
I'm immediately irritable. I guess I could give an analogy if someone drinks too much caffeine in the morning
okay.
and things start going wrong, and kind of like domino effects. You know how you just get aggravated?
Yeah.
That's right on my skin if I'm in that state. For myself, how I know is disorganization. If things are not organized, if I don't have things where they're supposed to be, if there would happen to be laundry on the floor.
Would those be triggers, or that would be like a symptom that you're noticing, like, why am I doing this? This is out of character.
That would be a sign that my mind is getting chaotic.
Okay.
If my environment is chaotic, then my mind is getting chaotic.
Interesting.
And that's why I keep things very organized at all times. I've asked my therapist before, I said, do you think I'm becoming obsessive? And I don't mean that diagnostically, obsessive compulsive. I'm not. And I don't like those diagnosis terms.
It's almost like you can't say anything like, I'm obsessed with cooking chicken. It's like,
yeah.
Oh,
no,
you have a problem.
Absolutely say that, but you're not obsessive compulsive. I've met obsessive compulsive, and that's horrible.
Did you say you have been, or you met?
No. I've met people truly with obsessive compulsive. Yes, it's horrible. So But I'm also not someone that, I don't get, I, I would never use words if I knew it was going to offend someone. However, I don't filter every word that I have to say, and I don't get offended by people that filter. If someone says crazy, I don't like it
Right.
particularly. But if I hear it in the context for which it's being spoken, I am not going to get all flustered by it.
Right. And
Uh,
sometimes, can I ask you this? Do you think people are more sensitive? Because let's say if I said, "Oh my gosh, you're getting this birthday party ready. You're like running around crazy. Like you got the cake, you got this." And I just mean like, "Wow, you have so much done." And they're like, "She thinks I'm crazy because of my diagnosis." Do people take it a little more sensitive when people just kind of use a layman kind of phrase?
my response to it in my head is, you have no idea what crazy is,
Okay.
how it can
So,
kill you,
so
how it can
how would you describe, you talk about needing to be organized, but do you have like, there's irritability, but do you have like, because you said you got suicidal and you talked about shame. And one thing that I appreciate is your honesty. And you were honest at court. You did admit to what happened, which
Mhm.
is so refreshing from what a narcissist does. But you also feel that shame. And it
Yep.
got really deep. And you also were concerned about your family. You
Oh
felt that
yeah.
your family would be ashamed. And so your feelings were onto them. When you have certain feelings, I know the narcissist is concerned about themselves. When you have uh, obstacles in life, it's a lot of your turmoil going over, I'm not good enough, or is it more, I'm letting my family down? Because there's two different ways people see certain things.
It would be, I'm letting my family down, and what is wrong with me? Because my actions and my behavior in those episodes that led up to everything at the age of 28 did not align with my conscience, my belief system, anything, my character. It did not align. So I couldn't figure out how this could even be happening. It wasn't a blame game, and it wasn't an out or an excuse for me.
Is it trauma based that you get bipolar, or is that
No,
genetic
it's just, yeah, I just have
or
it.
luck of the draw or
Yeah, no kidding.
misluck?
Yeah. It can be a blessing and a curse. And, throughout history, we've seen that with artists and leaders and
Yeah.
whatnot. It's a matter of management. And I guess it's my hope now, since we do know so much about bipolar disorder as well as other mental illnesses, that we can save lives by not having the shame of the label.
So how would you say bipolar is different than borderline?
That's very different.
Because a lot of people throw those two out, maybe because they both begin with a B,
Yeah.
but yours is more of a chemical thing going on, isn't it?
Yeah, borderline is a personality disorder,
Yeah.
and that's a very
So
difficult.
is yours managed with medication?
Yes, medication and therapy every week.
Okay. And
Um,
what kind of therapy do they do? Is it talk
my therapy,
therapy?
yeah, it's just talk therapy. But we do it through video now, thanks to
Okay.
technology, which is another wonderful thing for people that have mental illnesses or any issues,
Now,
that
can
we
I,
can have video therapy.
right? And this can be therapeutic too. But when you're on the medication, I know some people with schizophrenia or other kinds of even depression, anxiety, that they feel off. They feel different when they're on antidepressants, certain medications. I had a neighbor who was on lithium for schizophrenia, and they don't like that altered state. Do you feel better, more even, or is that uncomfortable for you? How do you feel on the medication?
Well, first of all, finding the right combination of medications is a long process, and it it ought not be an excuse for people to just not take medication.
Okay.
but it is difficult. So when I'm speaking to families of someone maybe recently diagnosed or they get aggravated because their loved one stops taking medication and whatnot, if at all possible, just have patience. It's very difficult. There are all different kinds of side effects to every one of them.
Right.
But once you find that combination, there might be some things that you have to live with. But you know
Okay.
what? That's life.
Right. You do
We
the
all have to
pros and
live with
cons
some.
of everything. And I'll tell
Yeah.
you what, I'm a teacher and I worked with severely emotionally disturbed children. And
Okay.
for the longest time, I thought you guys are way over, and I still think they're over medicating kids, but I'm like, this is all BS. Like,
Yeah.
we do not need to medicate these kids. And then I worked with severely emotionally disturbed children, and they were supposed to have their medication at 11 o'clock. So as a teacher, you're doing all these things. I'm like, I got to remember this. I got to remember it. I'm like, what is going on with my class? And I look at the clock. I'm like, it's 10:42. I can see that their 11 o'clock dose is due. And it was really interesting. And I was like, whoa, like they,
Yeah.
they almost lost their cool. And it was
Yeah.
just very interesting to see. And it changed the way I saw about it. So a lot of
Mhm.
us may not know somebody's struggling with something, or they may already be on medication and you don't see it until they're off of it. Now, you started telling me about your travel business, what happened. And before we start with that, can you tell me, because you said it went back to when you were in second grade, what were some of the things that you did in second grade that in hindsight, you're like, why didn't we catch this sooner?
Well, the important part, one of the most important parts, and this is why I too get concerned about children being diagnosed. And I'll speak only on bipolar disorder because that would be what I do know. I do want a diagnosis as early as possible, of
Right.
course. But one of the major components of diagnosing bipolar is like a 10-year history.
Oh,
It's very important. So
huh.
when I was diagnosed at the age of 28, the psychiatrists at two different hospitals were able to get the input from my family as well as myself.
Mhm.
At first I was very sick. So my input,
Emotionally sick or physically sick?
well, I was in a just a breakdown. It was right after the suicide attempt. I had never, I just got diagnosed. I didn't know, just started medication. So my communication was more of why didn't my suicide go through? That was where I was. I was kind of pissed that it didn't.
Yeah, some
Hey,
people other people are thankful that it didn't happen, but there are
no,
people,
I was ticked and embarrassed that it didn't too. I
right?
mean, it was like, oh my gosh. Um, so that hit back to that history. So these psychiatrists had a lot of information. Now, my mother was in education for 40 years, and we can look back. And in second grade, I lost concentration. I almost failed. My grades just went down, which was not me.
Right.
And in fact, my mother tutored me at the end of the year to get me to pass the second grade.
Right.
And um, the one thing that we knew happened was I had a teacher change in the middle of the school year. And I hated the new teacher, even though she's someone I know and still know, because my mother is a school teacher at the time in the
Right.
same school. And but the Mrs. Stevens that left, that when we look back at that, people with bipolar do not do well with change, immediate change.
Hmm.
So here I am, a 7-year-old, and there's been a big change.
Right.
And my response to it was shut down.
Okay.
Then we noticed every other year, my grades didn't get that bad like that. But me personally, I learned to hide those feelings because I grew up in a privileged life. There's no
Right.
reason for me to be sad. Grew up in the American dream and whatever that is now. But then I grew up in the American dream. But so we can look back and see how that was every other year, and that kind of stayed into adulthood. It was maybe every 2 years, it would
Dang.
go. So there was this flow that the psychiatrists could see. They were like, oh, now we can build this up. We can take 21 years and see what's happening here
Interesting.
and get that diagnosis, and then try medication and see if those things work. And I'm the type of person that I was in a homeless shelter after I left the hospital. So I walked to the library every day that I could and just read every single book on bipolar disorder that I possibly could. And you know what's interesting, Cynthia? I look back on that, and what I was honestly trying to do was prove that I did not have it.
Oh, well, I know a lot of times people, because I've also studied psychology, but sometimes people go into psychology or researching either to justify that they don't have something or to find out what's wrong with them.
Yep.
So were you trying to find of something different? Like maybe it's not bipolar, maybe it's just depression, or were you saying I have nothing?
No,
I'm
I didn't want anything at all.
right. Told you I was perfect. Oops, page 2.
Yeah. I mean, I knew something was wrong, and I knew my own heart. I know my own character. I know myself, so I knew what happened. Something had to happen for that to happen.
Right.
Um, but like I said, it was all new to me. I'd never heard of bipolar disorder. Being in the two psychiatric hospitals, I mean, I was like a man in a museum, because I'm a sponge with people. I love to study. I like to know what makes people tick. So for me to be watching people having episodes from schizophrenia and cutting and whatnot, and listening to their stories, I love to listen to people's stories, which I should have been concentrating on myself, but I was absorbing their stories. It's just fascinating to me. And I honestly said back then at 28, I'm like, I don't think I'm like this. I don't think I'm like these people.
Right.
You might get some responses from that, but I'm just being honest with the way that I thought,
Now,
coming from
when
my
I
world.
studied psychology, they had where they can put a healthy person into a psychiatric ward and they can actually become not crazy.
Yeah.
It affects them. Or there's people like they went in, they did a study, and I want to say it was for schizophrenia. I can't remember what the mental illness was, but it was like 5 of them, I believe. They were either nurses, something like that, but they were trying to go undercover and kind of do some research on
Mhm.
psychiatric hospitals. They checked themselves in and they make up these stories and they couldn't get out. Like they were trying to prove like, no, this was supposed to be just like a 1 month thing. And there was one person who had a really hard time getting out.
Oh my.
Do you believe the question I have is being around people with mental illness, um, do do you believe that it because I know like with narcissism, you can pick up toxic traits. And I know it's not bipolar is a little different though. It does that cause other people around you a lot of distress? Do you take things out on them? Do you yell at them? I know you did some manipulation or lies, different things like that. I'm not sure if manipulation is the exact word because I haven't spoken with you too much, but in your travels, did you promise stuff that you couldn't or didn't plan on giving them?
Oh
Or
yeah. Yeah, but that all groups into, I mean, there are many words that could feed into um like manipulation and stuff. But what it really drops into is grandiosity during mania.
okay,
You're detached, so you're not paying attention. It's all very real to you.
right,
I mean, to me at the time, I didn't think anything of it. Is everyone happy? Is everyone having fun?
right.
Then everything's
That is
okay.
good.
Yeah. And there's nothing that cannot be solved. And there's nothing you cannot solve.
Oh,
So that doesn't fall in line with narcissism, because in grandiosity, you may have the superhero complex,
Right.
but that superhero complex is falling on saving others. A narcissist would never do that.
Good point. Good point.
So
Yeah.
that would be a big difference between mania of bipolar and
Do you ever feel outside your body, almost like you're experiencing like a somewhat detached life? If you understand what I'm trying to say.
no, I have experienced detachment from the events, but no, not
What do you mean detachments from the events?
like what just happened. Like like a month can go by and I'm just like, what was that whirlwind?
Oh,
You know,
do you have
because
lapses in memories or distorted memories?
it's interesting with mania. It's because I have a good memory, too good of memory. But with mania, everything gets out of order, like chronologically.
Okay.
So it's very hard to piece together after a mania. So I have sections of
Okay.
from different things and conversations. My memory kind of works like a YouTube video. It records and I can play back. So, but from a manic state, it's very fragmented and it can't put it in context, basically.
Okay. And
You know?
talking about memory, when you think about things, if I say dog, do you picture a dog in your head or do you picture the words? Like, what kind of memory do you have? Mine is somewhat photographic. I took a French test. I closed my eyes. I in my mind read the vocabulary list, went across, and I'm like, oh, that's the definition. Do you see in color? Do you talk with voices like, up, you need to clean the kitchen, you need to or do you just clean the kitchen? What kind of mind do you have?
Well, if we go back to the dog scenario, I mean, the first thing that goes through my mind are all the dogs that I know or have had, or the others I've had, and their names, and see them
Okay.
like in movement. Like I remember that. That's how my mind goes. Um, I make a checklist every morning for things to do, but it drives me nuts having that. So I usually do them very quickly.
Is that a mental note or a physical note?
No, I make a physical note
Okay.
every morning. My life's extremely structured. It has to be, because that's how I gauge if my mental stability is off.
Okay. And they say
So
too, like hoarding or
mm,
clutter can be trauma responses. And sometimes too, it could be a symptom of something more going on.
yeah,
There's
I
a
don't.
reason you're not, where you kind of give up on cleaning or you are disorganized. It's usually a reason.
Yeah.
And what is your sleep cycle like?
Um, I go to bed usually by 7,
Oh, because your
and
mom was a teacher.
I am awake by 1:30 every morning.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
How does that
and
work for you? Is that good or bad?
good.
Is it?
Yeah, I um get up. I have my whole routine. I have my coffee. I write my gratitude journal,
I like
and then I
that.
meditate, and then it's yoga, and then it's the treadmill. I like to walk outside, but it's too cold right now.
Hmm.
I walk 6 to 8 miles a day, um, and then shower up and make a latte and sit down and journal and write. Um, I'll peek into the news for as long as I can take it. Um, but I kind of have a rule in my life to only take things in that not just add to my life, but expand it.
Okay. Now,
And I don't.
we're talking about Harrison. Let's talk a little bit about Harrison. This is
Yeah.
like your project, your online presence.
Mhm.
Tell me about Harrison.
Well, Harrison is a character that I developed when I was in prison. And I thought of it many different ways. At first, it was just escape. I need to write a story to escape. But then as I started the character and the characters involved, I realized that what I was actually doing was, if I lived through this, and if I could live to the age of 80, what would I like my life to look like? And that's what I did. I wrote the entire thing on paper in prison. And then when I came home finally, I typed it up and published it.
So
And,
I'd like you to send me a link later and I'll add it into the comments if they would like to purchase it.
sure. Yep. It's on the website too, on
Okay.
the homepage. Yeah, it wasn't a New York Times bestseller by any means, but it did sell in different countries, and it really had a good response with the demographic I wanted it to, because when I published it, I didn't do it for income. I wanted it to reach just one person.
Who is
If
that?
it would just reach one person to save a life,
Oh, one individual, just
yeah, and save a family, and hold a family together and friendships together.
Have
That's
you
what I
reconnected
wanted
with
it.
your parents? With
Oh
your
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, better than ever now. They took NAMI's family to family class, and
Oh.
that opened up the doors of understanding. Yeah.
And real quick, I would like to say, on my website, you can either type in NAMI for NAMI. I also, if you type in free resources, I did an interview with Ginny, our friend, who gives a ton of free resources. And can you tell me one more time, what does NAMI stand for? It's like North American
No, National Alliance of Mental Illness.
National Alliance of Mental Illness. Fantastic program. And
Yeah.
are you a coach or counselor for them as well?
I'm trained in family to family classes. I haven't done that for a while. But I've worked with them for 15 years on
So,
various projects.
so in your story, what is it you would like if you could reach the age of 80? What would you say would be the perfect life?
Service.
Service.
Yeah, I don't see anything more important than service, than giving back. I think that for me anyways, um, any suffering that we go through is an education to help the suffering. I'm not a fan of victimization.
Right.
I know there is a period of time that one goes through victimization enough, only enough to look at themselves and say, what can I do about this?
It is supposed to be a lesson. Yeah.
Yeah,
Whether
yeah,
it's to protect ourselves more or to watch out for red flags. And there are lessons. And that's why we were talking too, when sometimes when you hear, having that victim mentality for one thing will keep you stuck, that you have
yes.
to kind of change it into I'm a survivor.
Hmm.
And it shifts your life completely.
Hmm.
And it can be dangerous to feel like, yeah, I'm just I didn't do anything to deserve this. And that's okay. That is okay. Maybe you did not deserve it, but what do we learn from it?
Yeah,
And avoid it happening again,
and do something with it in order to serve back
or
is
pass
very
it on to
important.
somebody else, pay it
Yeah,
forward to look,
yeah,
listen.
yeah.
And that's why I appreciate you being honest about this. And now with the mental health stigma, it has gotten better. I also want to talk about the criminal stuff going on, but like how you're helping in the changes in the court system. Are they using that as a mitigating circumstance, or do you see it being overused, the insanity plea? Are they giving accommodations or mental health help in the prisons?
Mm.
Do you see any help or mitigation or understanding or overuse? What is going on in the criminal system?
Well, in the prison system itself, the bar has been raised on the Department of Corrections, Rehabilitation and Corrections, in addressing the mentally ill in prison. So that will always be a process, but I can say in the past 23 years, it has changed considerably.
So if
Um,
if you were to go back, which you won't, but if you were, would they continue giving you your medication on schedule, or would you have access to therapy?
Now they would give your medication on schedule, and you would see a psychiatrist regularly, and you would be answered if you requested help.
Oh, that's
When I
good.
was there, none of that was involved.
How many years has it been since it's started changing? And then I also wanted to ask you about the stigma. Do you still have people stigmatizing you?
Um, well, first of all, the changes with the prison system have been ongoing for probably 20 years, but major changes have happened in the past 15 years, I believe. As far as I'm concerned, someone
Right.
else might say something different. Um, but what I've seen as substantial changes from a person that experienced it, it's been the past 15 years. A politician might tell you something different. But and what was your second? Oh, stigma.
Stigmatizing. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, I think there has been so much work in stigma that the only thing that I personally see is kind of what we talked about earlier, is when someone is very nonchalant about having bipolar.
Okay.
And um, there's nothing nonchalant about it. It's lethal.
Yeah. Right
So
to that suicidal ideation. How prevalent is the suicidal ideation with bipolar?
very much so. Let's see. 20, I had written down a couple of statistics in case you asked me that question, because they change all the time. 21% of all suicides are with someone diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
Wow.
And those are the ones that we just know of that are diagnosed. I mean,
Yeah,
think of how
there's a lot that
people are
aren't.
diagnosed. When you come from a world like mine, middle class, rural America, had I not made such a mistake with my business or whatnot, I could have gone maybe a long time without diagnosis. Or if those manias were just something like, getting drunk or,
Right.
what you can be very comfortable in my kind of world. And that is one of the areas that have the highest suicide, especially with men. 69% of the suicides are with men that are middle-aged, in the middle class, white men, middle-aged, because
Wow.
we can't talk.
It's interesting too. And I want to get into this because I grew up near Detroit. I went to colleges where it was majority Black. You see like the difference between Black and white, with serial killers usually being white men. But there's, all these different things we can get into later. But there's something about it's almost like white privilege. But expectations and um how you're perceived, that also the way we raise boys, that tough it up, quit complaining, quit being a sissy, that they don't always know how to express themselves. And
Yeah.
sometimes we overcompensate though. And I think there's problems with that too, but there's something about, and race is changing it, but we're still not, we're people, but we're not treated the same. And sometimes there's this adjustment going on, but there's something with color still. And it could be whether it's economics, whether it's pressure from society on, like, come on, Cory, why would you have any problems? And you're like, but I do, and I'm sad. And it's like, just tough it up. You don't know what it's like. And you're like, I get, I don't know what it's like for them, but I'm talking about me. Please listen about me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting. And expectations on being the provider. You know, they could go, oh, poor Cynthia, you know, poor thing doesn't have that much money. But it's like, Cory, what's up with you? Why aren't you getting it together? So do you feel that has something to do with why it's an increase in men, or do you think it has something to do with testosterone? What do you think is causing an increase, that it's more male than female for?
Well, the whole masculinity thing has to be an issue of what that is supposed to look like. And people in general not just being allowed to be who they are.
Yeah.
To live in any image is ridiculous.
Right.
And I can't imagine the pressure that I've always been comfortable in my own skin.
Right.
I don't have an insecurity issue. So I can't imagine, but yet I see it with so many people. I've seen it all my life that I'm supposed to be this, this, and this. Therefore, I will be this, this, and this. Whereas I've never even thought that way.
And I want to bring one thing up, though, is this is what I feel is important. When you were so down in the dumps, actively trying to commit suicide, that you were thinking, and I get it, you were thinking about, I don't want to put shame on them. That would make them feel horrible.
Mhm.
But losing you is more horrible. And that's where the self-love comes in, that sometimes we project it on ourselves, or sometimes we project it on the others. But if we love ourselves, that we realize, you know, that we do have, like, they loved us. And it's the self-love that even if we lost them, that we're still worthy of life. And
That's not the way that the depressive suicidal mind works, though.
oh, I know. You're like,
My
screw.
love was leaving. My love was dying.
I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
That's the shift. And it's easier said than done, especially if you're in a triggered state with the way that the brain waves work. Some of us, because my channel mainly deals with narcissism and branching out, but the trauma bond, the CPTSD, the way your mind thinks when you are in a triggered state, it's almost like I've experienced some of this to some extent, to where I'm like, I get it. I get it. You, no matter how you reason, you know, that it doesn't click. And I know some people will watch my videos and they're like, you repeat yourself, you repeat yourself. And I'm like, for one thing, I'm a teacher. But the other thing is I know for me, after narcissistic abuse, I watched for like a year and a half, where I'm like watching and watching, and it's the same 6 sentences said so many different ways. And you're like, but well, sometimes you want to search for the answer you want,
Mhm.
and others is you just don't want to accept it,
Right.
or it's too foreign. Like, if you know, if somebody told me, well, I'm frustrated, so yeah, I put a cigarette out on my kid, they won't shut up. My
Mhm.
mind will never grasp that,
Yeah.
ever. But some people don't justify it, please. But some
Mhm.
people will justify it, like, they didn't shut up. I'm teaching them a lesson, and they
Yeah.
don't get it. Just like we don't get certain things. So you're right. When you're in that state, you feel that you're loving them. But is it, you know, we talk about the love languages. How do we show somebody their love language? That's not their love language. So for you to truly love them, they need to be loved in their way.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I can give you the best gift in the world. I can give you scuba gear. And you're
Mhm.
like, I'm terrified of water. I'm like, I know, but isn't it great? We get to go scuba diving. And
Right.
that's not the way I want to be loved. Sometimes
Exactly.
they have to realize that too. And it's a
Mhm.
mind shift, but when you're in that state, um, so the 2-year cycle, when you're on the medication, do you still go through that cycle? Do you have to adjust your medication every few years?
No, I haven't had to adjust my medication. I did go through shock treatment.
I'm glad you brought that up again. Is it just electrodes that they put on? How do they do the shock treatment? And is it to the frontal lobe or by the amygdala? Where is it?
The frontal.
The frontal.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like lobotomies were done. They went through the eyes and or kind of messed with the beginning or the frontal lobe. How does the frontal lobe shocking it? How does that reset it
I
or
guess you would call it more of a reset. First of all, it's not surgical, so it's not lobotomy.
right? It's not a lobotomy. Let me clear. Yes, yes, you're right. And they don't take anything out. It's not surgery.
Right. Yeah.
How many electrodes do they do? Is it only
I
like,
have no idea because they put you to sleep.
oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, they're putting them on. I guess I could stop and think about it. I always remember them putting them on. I don't know. There's probably maybe I don't know. I won't
Now
say for sure.
I had an EEG electroencephalocardiogram where they put just to check my brain waves because I was passing out all the time, but they put I don't even know 40, 50, 60.
Yeah,
So those
definitely.
are little, but
Yeah.
I've had your heart patches to check. Those are larger. Were they like large discs or were they like the small ones that
They were probably 50 cent or
okay.
quarter 50 cent piece
Okay.
on the front, and then in the back, right below your ears, that
Okay.
bone behind your head. Um, so I mean that was that is for deep depression mainly.
Okay.
Um, so yes, it worked.
How long
To,
does it work for, or is it a permanent cure? Or
no, once I got through the cycle, I was good. You
okay,
know, never stopping my medication. It's more like a boost to help instead of going through a whole new regimen of medications,
right.
and trying this and trying that. I trust my psychiatrist incredibly. I've known him forever. Um, so when he suggested it, I was like, okay, if that's what you think,
Okay.
I'll do it. And he did it himself
Hmm.
both times. I mean, I did 2 cycles of it. So, and that's such a big part of anything, especially with mental illness, is safety.
Who performs the shock? Is it a neurosurgeon,
Psychiatrist.
the psychiatrist, and is it
Mhm.
in a hospital? Well, it would be in a
Yep.
hospital.
It's in a surgery room.
Does insurance cover that?
Yes.
What kind of diagnoses do you know that they do it for?
Mostly depression,
Okay.
major
Do you,
depression.
do you struggle with anxiety?
No, I don't. No, not on a clinical level. Not at all. I can get a little anxious when things aren't going right or disorganized or chaotic.
So
But
I don't think we touched on the story of how things fell apart for you. We started talking about your travel business, and then I know we talked about beforehand, but you owed what was it, $350,000?
yeah, yep,
And was that for pre-bookings or
yes, that
and
was for future travel that
and
wasn't going to happen.
so did you knew it wasn't going to happen?
Yeah, there was no way I could. I just attempted suicide. There was no way that I could
Well,
regain that.
so before you got into your depressive state, did you plan on having all those bookings go through?
I never thought anything of it. Yeah.
Okay, so there was no malice in,
Oh no, no,
okay,
no, no. That's not a part of my makeup.
right. But there's the responsibility of,
Mhm. It still happened.
right.
Yeah.
And can I ask how long you were in prison for?
Um, a total of 2 years because it was 2 different blocks of time. So
Was it two different charges?
no, it was
Oh,
one charge, and then I returned because that's a whole other long story. It was for no other charges. I became homeless for a period of time, and that if you're don't report for your probation officer,
oh,
then
okay.
you have to go
The
back in. So,
violation.
Yeah, there are
So
no other charges though.
good. Within the prison system, though, is there a lot of mental illness or a lot of people coming off of drugs? Sometimes drugs can almost mimic like a mental illness. You're acting out of character. What would you say the mental makeup is versus out in society?
Um, See, the National Institute of Mental Health would have a number. I can look it up, but I think it's 30% of people in our prisons have a diagnosed mental illness.
Oh, and that's
Uh,
diagnosed. That's diagnosed.
yeah, and it's important to know too that those are nonviolent. Most are nonviolent. Mentally ill people get kind of a rap, obviously, I mean, for obvious reasons, on violence,
Right.
but
Yeah,
they're actually
they're
10
more,
times more likely to be the victim.
I've heard that too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very much. Yeah. So, you know, but I wanted to go back to one thing that you had said about the parent putting a cigarette out on a child, and we would not get our heads wrapped around that, and the five love languages and whatnot. I think that it's a great example because it's one thing that we don't do enough of, and I think we're getting there, is those peeling back the onion and the layers. It's not so much attacking the mother and saying, what are you thinking?
Right.
You know, that's just wrong, go to prison, whatever. Yes, suffer the consequences for doing something so awful, but why?
Yeah.
And keep asking why until you get to the core. What
Right.
happened to you? Why would you think that that is okay? And keep getting the answer to those whys until we figure out why.
Good point.
Because we're not built that way.
Right.
Human beings are just not built that way. We're conditioned into something. We're conditioned into who we are. And that's it goes so far beyond mental illness, but it goes into mental health, for which we all have.
Right. And that's why it's important not to just dismiss.
Mhm.
That's why on my channel, there's a lot of people done wrong by narcissists, but I see a lot of people higher than I would like to see. Amount of people who are like, I wish they'd die, or good, or I'm going to get revenge, or I keep their card to show them this, or, I'm going to reach out and disrupt, to their boss, or try to destroy their life. And, it's like the two wrongs don't make it right. And
No,
how it's going to make the person feel who's doing it, possibly now they're gonna like, whoa, I just did that. That's out of my character. And how people will perceive you now. Now
yeah.
you're seen as somebody who's destructive and
Mhm.
disruptive. So with NAMI, what is their main goal or way of helping people? Is it like getting to the core root, or getting them to a therapist, or to open up to people?
NAMI's main objective is education and legislation. So,
Well, legislation too. What kind of
yeah.
when you're done, I'm curious on the type of legislation.
Um, so in education, they have a wide, huge variety of evidence-based training that is proven to be just incredible as far as the paradigm of thought when it comes to mental illness in various stages, whether it's peer-to-peer, whether it's kids, families. I mean, it goes on and on. I think they have all the bases covered that I can think of. With legislation, NAMI is absolutely paramount to legislation within every state, all 50 states have a NAMI affiliate. And national NAMI is huge. I mean, you're going to see their name on anything when it comes to legislation with mental health.
Yeah.
Um, so it's advocacy. But yeah, they have a gigantic presence.
Now, I'll tell you one
Right.
thing, being a teacher, I just switched jobs this year, and it is so nice. It is so nice. We have like early release for the kids on Wednesday, and we have extra time to plan. We still have to stay in the building, but we're able to focus, better able to get our work done. And I'm now teaching English as a second language, so my class sizes are a lot smaller and tolerable. Not every
Mhm.
teacher is blessed like that, but
Right.
it is important that we, in the work system, that we do address mental health. The previous school, I liked how they handled it. You had a couple of days for mental health or your sick days, but they didn't argue, they didn't question, and you didn't have to prove everything. It was like, nope, this is your salary, this is the deal. And you didn't feel pressured to where you
Hmm.
say, can I just tell them that I have an upset stomach, or I'm too embarrassed to tell them I have diarrhea, and like I I just can't come in, and it was so nice. It was so
Yeah.
nice. So some legislation that they're working on now, what is something that they're trying to work on?
Oh, well, oh, there's a lot,
Would it be in
but
the workplace or the school system, or?
yeah, we've tried to do a lot with schools and social work, having social workers in schools, which is what my program did and it still does. Um, why that is difficult to get through the minds of politicians is beyond me. Every school shooting, we go through this. Mental illness is blamed for the shooting. They get legislation up, clear up to Congress. Um, and it depends what political party's in power if it goes through or not, because it has nothing to do, as far as I'm concerned, it has nothing to do with the kids. It's whatever political power, and because it's between them who wins. So it's very frustrating
And
to
I
see.
know,
Yeah, well, it's just very frustrating to see, and I'm not getting political about it. It's more of the character of who we are as a country. What could be more important than getting legislation done with our track record
right.
with shootings?
And I had a friend of mine, she called me one night. Um, she, I remember that night. Okay. So I heard there was a school shooting somewhere. I want to say it was south of Arizona, but it was somewhere out that way. Maybe it was Arkansas, somewhere away from, I was in Tennessee that time. So there's a school shooting, and I told myself, just relax. It's not going to happen to you. And so anyways, I I get a call asking if I'm okay. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And 20 minutes after I left the college that I was working at, 6 days after I started, 200 feet from where my car was, 20 minutes after I left, there was a school shooting in the parking lot. It was targeted, but I'm like, whoa, this really hits home. So you're sitting here, it's okay, relax, it's not going to happen. But that was 20 minutes after I left, 200 feet from my car.
Yeah,
So,
I I met some of the parents of the Sandy Hook tragedy in Washington D.C. A couple years after that happened, and I guess I don't have the ability to not understand or feel empathy. I do not
say that one more
understand.
time. You don't
I don't.
understand not
I
being
don't
able
have.
to have it?
I don't have the ability to not feel empathy.
Okay, same here.
So I don't understand the whole idea. Like you use the words, "It will not happen to me." I'm not talking about you, but it doesn't need to happen to you.
True.
It should not happen to you. It happened,
Right. That is true.
and it continues to happen. But it doesn't even have to continue to happen for us to do something about it, because it happened clear back in the early 90s in Columbine. So this progression is mind-boggling to me. And I used to get extremely angry about it, but I discovered that's just a reaction. But to respond to it is, I cannot understand how we cannot be more logical and rational about a system as important as early education in this country of all countries.
True.
And instead we need security at every school. We have resource officers, right?
We have metal detectors.
Or-
Yes.
Okay, so wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Just like we were talking about the woman that put her cigarette out on the child, these are band-aids that we're doing. We're not fixing the problem.
I agree. Yeah.
Who can fix the problem are mental health professionals, social workers, identifying teachers being trained so they can see the difference between, okay, this kid is just antsy all the time and he needs to get up and walk around his desk 10 times and then he'll be fine. This kid, something is wrong. There's something in his eyes. There's something off that we need to figure out why. And that teacher should have the resources within that school to find out what.
True.
Whether it's child abuse, abandonment, mental illness, whatever. School resources officers are great, but we have to have those because we've had so many school shootings.
True.
And we've had so many school shootings because since the early 90s, we've never addressed the core issues.
I agree.
Sorry, I got on my soapbox there.
No, you have so much to say. Like, I'm really enjoying this. And I will say something, how I did say that, like, trying to calm myself is kind of like a trauma response. Like, I don't know what to do. Do I jump ship? Because it does cause fear. But you're right, it did happen and something does need to change. And it's like that trickle down effect that when you know that you have to get in your car in the next 15 minutes to go to this place, it's almost like a survival technique just to get through that day. But with the fear, there's got to be things too, like with the kids, they've changed how our drills are over the last few years, and it might be because I'm changing schools. But even like our tornado drills, we're not like all covered up. It's just kind of like sitting there. And also like the shoot, the drills for a possible
active shooting.
Yeah, that we handle it completely different. And I think it's like not to install like a fear in our kids. But it seemed now in the 90s, I'm trying to remember because I'm 53, born in 70. I know gas was like 79 cents when I was 16, something like that. But in the 90s, was there, because Reagan got shot in 80, in the 90s, what was it in the 90s? Things do seem to have changed. I had my daughter in 92. We had the tough love. There's like different changes and compensations. And do you see mental illness getting worse or better? We have a lot of people addicted to drugs now, which is like a trauma response a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And some of these problems might not be mental illness. Some are. It seems like a lot of the times it's a school shooting. It's not because they're strung out on drugs. It's because of mental health issues or anger issues.
Yeah, or there's a lot of the school shooters have fell through every social service gap there is.
Yeah.
So they feel worthless. They hate everyone. And by the time we get to them, they're already shooting children, when they should have gotten help.
Right.
Back when the Parkland shooter was a perfect example of that. When I went through his whole timeline, he fell through every single gap there was. I can't imagine going from home to home to home not wanted.
Yeah.
So it's not an excuse. It
Right.
isn't. But we should take that kid and study him. He's still alive. Study him and figure out how we do not do this. But they're not. But you asked if is mental illness that's more prevalent. We have to think here, in 1950 to now, the population of the world has gone up by 2.5 billion.
You're right. You're right.
Our awareness for mental health has gone up substantially, which is wonderful. I think I don't know if there's misdiagnosis, but I don't know what that issue might be. There's not enough mental health professionals. I mean, there's just not enough nurse practitioners and psychiatrists and psychologists. You can't. Schools will pay big money to get a school psychologist.
Yeah, you're right. I'd actually like to go. I contemplated it. I've taught psychology. I've been a college professor teaching criminal law, but the way it is in Michigan, you have to work I believe it was 6 months or something. And it's just, I pretty much have to quit my job to do it. And you can't, a lot of it has to be on site. You can't take it online. So where I am, where the colleges are, it's really hard to coordinate. And I would love to do that. But when you start adding up all these different things, it's like, you guys are making it impossible.
Yep.
I don't mind putting in the work, after school, I'll go for 4 hours, but it's not going to match up. And we had before a requirement to work for 911 for, I believe, 6 months. And I don't know, that was always my dream to do that. But
I think Ohio State University, someone told me about it last time I was down there speaking. Ohio State University is doing some big push, incentives for psychologists and school psychology specifically.
Interesting.
But I don't know exactly what it is. I don't know if they're doing scholarships, probably scholarships of some sort. But we don't, and we don't have enough people. There's so many things. But I'm a problem solver. I don't mind looking at problems, of course, because you have to, and then compartmentalizing them. And it all seems like chaos right now. But there are so many good parts, like the mental health, all the celebrities, and especially the sports figures. When we talk about masculinity and men, these men that people consider real men coming up and out and speaking out is all wonderful. It just all seems like so much in the past 10 years. So I also look at it all as opportunity. I'm like, okay, so where do we pluck this and put this and do with all this?
Yeah.
So these conversations have to keep going. And one of the positive things, like on podcasts and video podcasts that I see is so wonderful, is you have the Jay Shettys and the Lewis Lowe's and the Rich Rolls, and they're even on each other's shows. They're not on competition.
Interesting.
They interview each other, and these are people who garner all these millions of people, and they do these things with each other. And it's such it's a wonderful collaboration to see all of this mindfulness getting out there without the self-help, let's get rich crap.
Right.
Because I'm not a fan of that. And if you are specific, you're 22 years old, you just got out of college, and I love Tony Robbins' philosophies. I love him now more because now he's more into the mindfulness.
Okay.
Not the get rich.
Right.
But I see why a young man wants to, or a young woman is like, let's read Tony Robbins' book, and because it is helpful. Those are
Right.
helpful books to understand how to organize your mind and organize your life. But it doesn't organize your mental health per se. It teaches you how to win. And I mean, I read all those books when I was in my 20s, but I love seeing this evolving to, and even the ones that talk about, you know, how to manage money and how to make money and whatnot. Every one of them that I've reviewed all come back to, you have to have service. You have to be of service.
Mhm.
This is how you have a whole life. It's not about just getting rich. You have to be of service, you know?
Right.
And
You have to feel good about it, because you can have so much money in the world, but if you're
yeah,
not feeling good about it, or you can travel alone for a while, and eventually you're going to feel lonely. We are
yeah,
social beings, so even if it's making a difference in somebody's life, sitting down having coffee and talking to
yep,
them, but to just travel and be a nomad, yeah,
yeah.
we need that
Some of
connection.
some of the loneliest people you'll meet go on a stage every night in front of hundreds of thousands of people. Some of the poorest people I've ever met are rich.
Good way to put it. Good way to put it.
So,
And you also
but
feel
so
like a
that whole health,
paranoia. You don't know who your friends are,
oh yeah, that's
you
definite.
know? It's like, do you want to date me because I'm famous, or do you want to be my friend because I'm rich? That you start shying away, you start self-isolating.
And
And
it's a common thread. And it's a common thread amongst all of us, these issues, and they happen on different levels and different ways. But we are all really the same when you strip it all down. Like I said, we're not born to do some of these things. We're conditioned. Yeah, you know, we're born actually to love and be loved.
right.
We're conditioned into greed and competition.
And competition, survival of the fittest. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's so I look at I look at it as all opportunity. Um I do. But I will say one thing when we get back to mental illness, when I speak of that broad mental health, with chemical imbalance of the brain, with a diagnosed mental illness, we do lose our choice if those chemicals get out of line.
So
So we, go ahead.
you can't be rational. Is it like that triggered state? Your brain will not allow you. Can
It
you
just
explain that a little bit?
changes. We can't, we don't have that logistical and rationale when when those episodes happen. Just as if you had cancer or let's take diabetes, that's a good one. Just as, you know, you're a year older and your blood sugar changes.
Right.
You might be eating the same as you did the year before, but you're a year older. And all of a sudden you're finding your insulin goes up or down, even though you're doing everything the same. The
Uh,
same thing is with bipolar disorder.
huh.
Those chemicals change. And
Right.
then you have to adjust and adapt. And yeah, you just adjust and adapt to what that is. And I say you just have to. A lot of people can't.
Interesting.
It's, I mean, they can, but it's extremely difficult because you get exhausted. The average person with bipolar disorder lives to the age of 65.
Really?
Yeah, that's
That's
how stressful it is.
yeah,
Seriously.
that's not good. That's several years.
Heart disease, and it's the stress of it. And the medications, you know, we have to go through, and you know, suicide's a large part too. But really it's stress, it's heart disease, it's other factors.
Do you get panic attacks?
No,
No. What kind of
no.
physical manifestations does it have? Headaches or dizzy or
Mm-mm.
okay, so
No.
huh.
Yeah, nothing physical.
Does your brain ever feel weird?
Uh-uh.
Okay, so you never feel like loopy or um
No. No, it's very much in the the synapses is very much in the way you think, the thought process, that cognitive thinking. That's why it's so hard to you can take five. I'll use men because I'm a man. You take five men, different IQs, different upbringings, socioeconomics, education levels, and they all have a certain they all definitely have diagnosed bipolar disorder. Their reactions and their responses to different things are going to be different.
Right. Is that because of their upbringing?
Of all of those factors, their education level, socioeconomics, culture, everything, they're going to respond to things different. And I saw that a lot in the hospital, and I saw that a lot in prison. The way I would respond to something, and this is being medicated, of course, but I grew up in complete safety and structure. My parents are still married. I have an incredible family, an incredible extended family. I'm an only child, but I have cousins all over the place, and I had my great grandparents most of my life, well, until high school, all of them. So
Really?
I had just the perfect upbringing. The way I responded to someone that grew up abused, by their father. One grew up completely abandoned, went through the foster. I mean, I have hundreds, right? Because I studied all of them, through the foster care system. Just physical abuse, sexual abuse, abandonment, hunger, homelessness as a child, all of these things. They are going to respond quite differently than me because I don't come from a place of insecurity. I know a good world exists.
Yeah, you see
Even though I'm 28 and in prison,
right.
I know what life can be. And as far as I was concerned, up to the age of 28, what life just was.
Right.
I had one guy in prison tell me, he said, and I didn't even tell him anything more than my parents were married and where'd you grow up, and we would have a farm, and just the very simple things. I would never have shared anything more than just basic with anyone in prison. And he looked at me and he teared up and he said, your life might as well be a movie to me.
Oh, wow.
That's completely unattainable.
Really?
That, yeah, and I'm sitting there thinking, no, my mother was a school teacher. I've been all over the place. I'm like, don't tell me that that's not attainable in the United
Right.
States. It is. But to him, it absolutely was not. And with that mindset, it will never be.
True.
And we're doing that to children.
Yeah.
These kids
How do you
suffer
see it
because
manifesting in children though? Making it unattainable?
well, where would they see, what examples do they have? What examples
You
do
and
they have?
I.
Yeah. Well, us, but are they actually ever going to watch this? Are they going to, I have the ability, you have the ability. I read.
Right.
And it's not just about being able to read, it's knowing what to read. This is
Oh,
bothering me, so I'm going to get this book, and this book. And if I want to study a subject and need find 10 books, I can buy them.
yeah,
They can't.
that's true. They might not have the transportation to the library also, and
Yeah.
good point. And there's a hidden agenda going on. But uh I see problems in the school system too with a lot of stressors. The things that kids are learning now, they're just
Mm-hmm.
being pushed through. They're like, do this, do this, do this, just do it. And it's like, whoa, I don't understand. Just get it done. And it's overwhelming. So like I said, I'm an ESL, English as a second language teacher now. So I help tutor these kids. So I teach English and then I help them with, I tried avoiding math like crazy. So I had to teach geometry, algebra, chemistry, physics. But I'm like, whoa, this is like some high level stuff. And I was also in nursing school. My nursing school closed on me, but some of their health and human sciences or whatever, it's like, this is ninth grade. And this is like second semester nursing that we did. And
Mhm.
get it done this week, and compound that with how many classes they have.
Yeah, that's a lot. But I mean, like we just identified those problems. I think the awareness of that and that ability, the more we can get out into the community, into society at large, that there are reasons why people are who they are, behave how they behave,
True.
and it does not justify it. It doesn't.
I agree.
But there's a difference between reasons and excuses. An excuse is a lie.
That's true.
If you're giving me an excuse, you're just lying to me. If you give me a reason, we can get into that. Because
Interesting.
you're taking
Right.
personal responsibility, I'll take personal responsibility, and we'll sit down and we'll get down to business and get down to the core of what's going on.
I like
Uh,
that.
so, and that that will all be done from the bottom up. It's not going to be done in DC down. So it's absolutely up to us to do that within our communities,
I agree.
not for someone else to do it and then have our expectations drop because it didn't happen, and then dehumanize the very people that didn't meet that expectation.
Yeah. We seem to not have grace anymore. Everybody's
No.
just yelling at each other or cutting each other down instead of
Mhm.
building each other up. And I noticed that sometimes, tell me your thoughts on this. Sometimes how we talked about the suicide, how we talked about the love thing, how, self-love and this, that even how we perceive ourselves changes the way we talk. So if I have low self-esteem, you probably don't want to go out to dinner with me.
Right.
You're like, why? And it kind of makes you question, like, what's up with this girl? And it happens over time where she's been doing this for every time she talks about dinner, just have a nice time with me. Or how, look at what you made me do instead of I did it. And the way we communicate based on how we see ourselves changes the way the words come out, and the way the words come out turn out to be toxic because we don't love ourselves. When we love ourselves, we're able to give love, which is that act of service. That's why self-love, not grandiosity, but loving yourself, giving yourself grace, healing that inner child. Or if you have the mental illness, to take care of it. What is interesting with me is schizophrenia. Once you get to a certain level, you cross the threshold and you can't come back. With bipolar, is that like a lifelong thing? Can you ever come back? Is there any way to rewire your brain? Because with depression, anxiety, sometimes you can rewire it.
Yeah. No.
What is
No.
the
There's no
average,
cure.
what's the average age of onset for bipolar?
Late 20s.
Late 20s.
That's why you see all of your, um, a lot of celebrity suicides
Do you
are in
think
the late 20s. Kurt Cobain,
Kurt
and the
Cobain?
list
I know
goes.
Selena Gomez has bipolar, correct?
Yeah, but she's still alive.
Yeah,
But
she is.
that did manifest in her 20s. So, um, but that's where you see a lot of that 28. They call it the 28 crowd, the Kurt
Right.
Cobains and the was it Jimi Hendrix, and I can't
Was
remember
Jimi
who.
Hendrix bipolar?
I believe so.
Really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
and the Doors. What was his name?
Jimmy,
Jim Morrison.
yep,
Yeah. But I wanted to go back to something else that you had said when you were talking about self-love
right,
and how we respond to whatnot. To truly love yourself, you can't love an image of yourself. And I think people are being told to love an image of themselves through reality TV or what Facebook or whatever they compare themselves to. You have to know yourself
yeah, and
to
it's not
love.
like I'm the prettiest girl, or I'm so smart, or I'm the cheerleader. It's
You have
like
to be
really,
confident and know yourself. And those things don't even matter.
you're right,
I
and
mean,
they'll change too.
yeah, I
They'll
mean, I
change
find
with
that
time.
I've always found that sad all my life when someone their identity is based on something that is first of all out of their control, second of all has nothing to do with anything.
Right,
And that confidence and that self-love isn't conceit, it's simply confidence in knowing who you are.
right,
And once you do know that, um, things don't people don't shake you. I mean, people's like your opinion of me is none of my business. I don't
right.
care.
Like, do you have to lose sleep over whether I think I liked your shirt or not? Like, can you still go to sleep? And if I didn't like it, so what?
Yeah. And I've gone through, lost friendships, and that was because of bipolar and me lashing out because I was scared and just whatnot. That was very painful. But coming through that, I still didn't question who I was.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sometimes, we have to recognize our flaws. None of us are perfect. We
oh
can
no,
either work on our flaws, but um, now what were you afraid of? Was it a fear of abandonment or afraid of being found out about something? What?
no, no. I know I'm a very open book, so there is no paranoia. Um, bipolar can make you extremely scared, and I was raped in prison, so my safety was justified, and I had never not been safe in my life. So that happened for 6 months. So if I feel abandoned or if I don't have a voice, it's like drowning to me. It's like I'm not being heard.
Right,
I can't tell you I need help. Or if I'm treated with indifference when I'm sick,
right.
it's like drowning, like I'm going underwater. And
And
so
you
that
don't, you shut
yeah,
down. You don't speak
those,
on it.
no, I'll lash out
Okay.
just like a person drowning. Oh,
Right.
you don't
They'll
you don't
take
jump.
their rescuer down with them, trying to.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's exactly well, I've done it once or twice. Um, one episode that lasted a while. But that fear factor, that comes from trauma though. But bipolar disorder can raise everything 10 times, you know. It just everything is more. It gets magnified. I've never met someone, and I don't know if this is clinically true, but I bet it is. I've never met anyone with bipolar disorder that their emotions are not right on their skin.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, they
So
can.
much I could just tell you're having a bad day, or you're angry with me, or
Yeah,
irritated.
well, I don't think you'll even have to wonder. They'll, they'll, they'll either be very upset or they'll slice you in half with their tongue. I
Okay.
mean, it's just our emotions are and I don't think I'm an emotional guy, but that's not so much of my personality part. That bipolar
Right.
is the part that's very emotional on my skin.
So are you, when you're in your irritable stage, as an example, let's say you and I were married, would you be like, just stop? Or would you be, get your fat ass out of, like, would you cut me down and hurt me? Or would you just be like, whoa, I just yelled at her. I shouldn't have told her to just get away. I'm doing this. Or
I,
do
I'd,
you get hurtful?
I'd walk away.
Oh, you'd walk away. And what
Not
about like, look,
necessarily from, not necessarily from the relationship. I would walk
right.
away from the situation.
Okay, so then I ask, look, when can we talk about this? You know, I can tell you're upset, but I need to talk about this. How would you respond to that?
I just listen. I would talk.
You want to talk, talk.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why do you do
Yeah.
that?
There
Is it
would be no.
you shut down? Is it like avoidance? Is that common among
I
bi?
can't handle. I can't handle anyone else's chaos in my mind.
Interesting.
Otherwise, I'll lose control.
Oh, okay.
So it's important, and that comes with years of learning coping skills and learning myself and therapy and
Right.
you know, um, but that would be the way that I'm very guarded with my mind.
I see a lot of men like that though. Is that
Yeah. Well, I'm very vulnerable and transparent, but I'm very guarded with what comes in.
okay?
I'll tell anything, but
Right.
I'm very guarded with what comes in
Okay.
because if I, especially with people that are in my life, in my circle of influence,
Right.
if I lose my footing, then everyone's going to fall.
Okay.
So it's like, just like with service, I consider what I do, public speaking, advocacy, writing, my purpose in life.
Right.
Therefore, I protect my purpose and my
Right.
purpose protects me.
Yeah. Good.
So I will protect that before anything else, before I allow someone to come in and rock my world.
Right. So if I had told you, look, I'm really upset. You keep leaving the dishes on the table. I'm busy with the kids and I feel you're not listening to me. Would you feel I hate you or I'm about to leave you? Or would you be like, okay, that makes sense. She's upset.
That I wouldn't think that you're, no, I wouldn't think that you're
Okay.
even mad. I would just be
Oh.
like, oh, okay, well, thanks for letting me know. And
Okay.
let's
Interesting.
now, if there's a different subject every day, I would turn around and say, okay, why are you trying to find something wrong with me?
Okay. Right. So a lot of times too, there's a bigger issue.
Right.
A bigger issue.
Mhm.
And so the one thing that you feel was the biggest turning point into a more stable or more happy life, what would that be? Would it be the medication or the talk therapy, or could you do one without the other?
No,
No.
no, I couldn't. I try. I mean, I did, but it doesn't work. It's not whole. I'm not whole in that. Um, Safety is important, stability, medication, and therapy.
How
But
does therapy help you?
just to express myself unconditionally.
Yeah.
And I have an incredible therapist. Um, but he can listen to me speak and then identify if I'm not seeing things clearly or from a filter.
Right.
So
Do
I
you
have a
do you
tendency to be,
struggle? I'm sorry,
hmm?
go ahead.
Well, I have a tendency to be very critical of myself.
Of yourself. Okay.
Yeah. So he always, it's almost like a permission type thing. He's like, you really should do that when they asked you to do that. And I'm like,
Okay. Yeah, so it's kind of asking about the dishes. Where would you think I hated you? You know,
yeah.
there are times people are like, oh my God, they hate me, they're
Mhm.
gonna leave me. And it's like, whoa, just said take the trash out, please. You know. Well, I'll tell you what, I really enjoyed talking with you. If you
Mhm.
are interested, I would love to have an ongoing series with you. Very
Yeah.
interesting. I know you have a lot to share. There's a lot more different avenues we can take this, but Cory,
Mhm.
thank you so much. Make sure I have that link. So in case they want to purchase your book or even just your website,
Oh yeah.
more about you, and I look forward to talking with you again.
All right. Well, thank you.
Take care. Thanks so much. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.